Everyone is in their morning routine. Aunt Glad has what looks like a cartoon chemistry set, mixing concoctions. Riot is running through a morning kata in full mirror armor. Grandpa grumbles that his own mirror arms, from holding the door shut for 15 years, can't be matched, whatever that means. Riot ignores him. Kalm is in full gear mode, fussing over her three-headed axe. The hammerhead's crooked teeth are sharp and goofy. The second head, with its handlebar mustache, shines proudly above what is basically a 3-foot nose pick. Not the kind Grandpa uses at the dinner table, but a literal pick. And her long spiked hair is just as sharp, wrapping around to form the third head of the axe. In battle, it flows and shifts, angling itself toward whatever strike promises the best impact. Grandpa is planking. He's jammed a sword into the ground handle first, set a hot lava coal on one side, an icicle on the other, and a sharp piece of reef just beneath his face. And he's asleep, using the reef as a pillow. That's when the prince's crystal chariot drifts down the new mirror waterfall connection like a royal limousine. A rolled-up wet carpet spills out the door, and the prince strides across it, stopping in front of Grandpa Fury. The old man barely cracks his left eye open. "Wake up, old man. Jellyfolk don't have debts. We have a grand feast for you, for saving us, just like you wanted." Grandpa mutters, "No, we already had that feast. Did I hit you on the head too hard?" The prince colors brightly. "That tiny snack was for the pop-up legendary games, where I won in grand fashion. That is what the historians are recording, though you ultimately lost. We competed. We did well. Well, I was grand, and you did try." Fury opens both eyes now, unimpressed. The prince shifts, a little less sure. "This one is different. This one is gratitude. Isn't that what you originally came for? My parents' table waits. The nursery is set. My parents have returned. While I was busy letting you show off, the king and queen were away at the nursery. The move is completed." Riot sighed, dragging his hand across his helmet. "Aunt Glad, I really need a better solution. I don't want to be a frog again." Aunt Glad barely looked up from her bubbling glassware. "Dear, when you already have something that works?" "Not a frog again," Riot interrupted, scowling. Her grin spread sharp and wide. "Then you're in luck. I've been inspired. If the Jellyfolk can control their transformations, surely the family's armor-bearer can do the same. I call it shapeshifty serum." Riot frowned. "Why can't the family armor-bearer just use your bubble tech instead?" That struck a nerve. Aunt Glad went pale, then furious. "No, no, no, absolutely not. Even if you signed an NDA, I wouldn't trust you, not even family." She slammed down a vial, muttering about patents and liability. "Bubble pods are off the table. Do you have any idea how many ants had to drown for me to get that formula right?" Riot blinked. "What?" "Exactly," she snapped. "You want bubbles? Get your own grant money. Mine's tied up in fermentation experiments. Bubbles are crutches anyway. Real adventurers build lung capacity with suffering." She huffed, waving him toward the serum. Riot gave in and swallowed the shimmering mixture. For a heartbeat, it looked triumphant. His armor gleamed, his form stretched into something sleek translucent, and then he was a shark. 3 seconds later, he wasn't. Impulse had hijacked him. Every mood, every whim, even stray thoughts twisted his body. Scared, a guppy; angry, a dolphin; annoyed, an eel that promptly shocked itself. He had zero control, flickering through silhouettes like a broken lantern slide. Only when his energy burned down did he stabilize, into, of course, a squat strawberry frog. Kalm leaned on her axe, unimpressed. "Cool shade of pink, bro." Riot's frog face rippled into a dragon snarl. "Love you too." Kalm rolled her eyes. "Why don't you try something with gills, because I'm not sharing my snorkel with you." She vaulted forward, her three-headed axe doubling as a grappling harpoon. With a single throw, she caught the waterfall's edge, yanked the line tight, and slingshot herself into the roaring water. She vanished through the mirror's surface and zipped straight into the ocean beyond. Aunt Glad only sniffed. "Go ask the other ants if you want bubbles. I'm putting in a patent claim." Aunt Glad floated in her own bubble sphere, smug as ever. Riot lagged behind, shifting uncontrollably. One moment a frog, the next a random sea creature that made notes for efficiency. Grandpa Fury cut straight through the water, never pausing for breath. His arm, still marked by the years he'd held the mirror realm door shut, moved as if air was no longer required. Kalm followed, weapon locked in snorkel harpoon mode, each thrust of the axe pulling her forward with precision. The prince's submusine tugged baskets behind it, ropes straining in the current. Aunt Glad had secured the line herself but refused to climb inside. None of them did. They preferred the water. The reef castle emerged like a vision, not just glowing arches and coral spires, but alive with bubbles. Massive air pockets shimmered under domes of woven kelp and shell. Some floated free like chandeliers, others anchored into the coral outcroppings. To an outsider, it looked chaotic, but together the pieces formed a second city nested inside the first. The largest bubbles had been carved into vertical shafts for the ants. Each lumbering worker wore a segmented air pack strapped to its body, able to vent or fill chambers around its legs. By choosing which feet had lift, they scuttled sideways across bubble walls, climbed ceilings, or dropped down in zigzags like elevator crabs. Overhead, the plaza ceiling shimmered with their silhouettes, mandibles clacking like metronomes. Inside the shared bubbles, orientation lost meaning. Jellyfolk stood serenely on the surface of the water like living holograms, while ants clung to walls and ceilings. To human eyes, it was dizzying, an Escher painting of insect legs, rippling light, and floating tables. But for the Jellyfolk, this was diplomacy at its most perfect. Everyone had footing. No one drowned. Then came the ripple through the plaza. The king and queen had arrived. The king loomed immense, a squid-shaped diplomat whose split-colored glow shifted with his moods. One half of him pulsed red and pink, the other blue, purple, and green, as if judgment itself wore flesh. Draped across his head was something that resembled a colonial wig, though no one could decide whether it was clothing or a living pet he dignified into fashion. The queen chose a stranger grace. She appeared as a translucent woolly rabbit, kangaroo-sized, her webbed forepaws gliding across the floor. She hopped forward lightly, ears trailing ribbons of light until she stood at his side. Elegance radiated from her form, but so did playfulness, a shape no one would dare mistake for weakness. The queen spoke first, skipping pleasantries. "We must apologize. Our son challenged you to games before proper introductions could be made. That was not the impression we wished to leave." The king's voice followed, resonant as tide. "We only hope our reputation has preceded us." The queen leaned toward him with a soft glow, her words flowing smoothly. "Most of what you've heard is true. Not all, of course. No culture is perfect. But we lead by example, not excuse." Her ear flicked against his arm, ribbons of light brushing him like a casual touch. The king straightened, his colors firm. "That is partly why you came to our rescue without ever meeting us. You knew the benefits we Jellyfolk offer, even while we were occupied." Aunt Glad tilted her head, eyes sharp. "Well, actually," Grandpa Fury cleared his throat. His tone turned oddly stiff, formal. "Actually, we'd never heard of the Jellyfolk until you filled the vacancy." Aunt Glad smirked, covering for him. "What my brother means is, we don't know much about any ocean folk, Jellyfolk included, but our reputation as heroes is true as well, though maybe not with quite the right hand gestures." The plaza pulsed scandal colors. Half the crowd flickered crimson, half green. The prince blurted over the murmurs, trying to smooth it. "The family jewels were never in danger." It didn't help. Everyone knew he'd only managed one victory in 30 contests, after 19 straight losses. The king and queen's glow dimmed in quiet disapproval, while gossip rolled like a wave, scandal pink and mocking green. The king steadied his light, half burning deep red, half cool blue-green. "Then perhaps we should show you, instead of asking you to guess at shadows. Besides, we haven't seen it ourselves yet either, other than some signatures." The queen leaned in again, almost affectionate. "You're much too modest, dear. I know you made models of every option." The king chuckled softly. "Shh, don't ruin my showmanship. I'm not just the Jellyfolk king right now. I'm your guest tour guide." With a flourish, his glow reshaped, and on his head appeared a conductor's cap. Or maybe it was just his crown pretending to be one. Either way, he wore it proudly. The Royal Banquet Hall. They were guided into a vast air bubble chamber grafted onto the reef castle. It wasn't just a room, it was a spectacle of engineering. On the left side, the floor was flooded in knee-high water, perfect for Jellyfolk to glide in and out of form. On the right, the hall was dry and formal, chandeliers glowing like captured reefs. At the far end, the bubble opened into a grand ballroom where ants marched across walls and ceilings, their bubble packs gleaming in the light. and then the food arrived. At first, it seemed like a normal procession of trays, servants carrying platters toward the long tables. But then came the clatter. The heroes leaned forward, realizing it wasn't servants at all. It was a toy train, winding across the banquet floor. Car after car rattled by, each loaded with something stranger than the last. Glowing fruit plucked from trench gardens, smoked lava crabs whose shells still glimmered faintly with heat, desserts shimmering like stained glass, bending the chandelier light into rainbows. The train looped behind an archway, vanished for a time, and then clattered back 20 minutes later, cars stacked even higher with new dishes. It never seemed to end. The queen gestured as though this were nothing unusual. This is who we are. We build, we connect, we share. If our reputation has not reached you, then let the truth speak for itself. Grandpa Fury's jaw twitched. For a breath, it looked like he would scoff again. Then his eyes widened as the train looped around once more, heaped with delicacies, his mouth shut with a grunt. From their seats, Jellyfolk residents stole glances at the visitors. Some shimmered gossip colors. Others tried to hide quick smiles. A few ants clicked their mandibles in what might have been applause or curiosity. Aunt Glad leaned back, unimpressed. All this spectacle and not a single bubble patent credit. Kalm elbowed Riot. Bet you transform into a shrimp next, just to blend in. Riot smirked, scales rippling along his arm before he forced them back. Better than a frog, getting the hang of it. His skin flickered pink, then steadied again. Not perfect, but progress. The king watched all of this with delight, his glow shifting like a spotlight across the room. He slid an affectionate glance toward the queen, then flourished one arm as though conducting an orchestra. Well then, he announced grandly, if our feast is endless, surely our halls deserve equal attention. Shall we? The queen smiled, indulgent. Perhaps a tour, then. Even we have yet to walk the newest halls. We trusted the plans, believed them best for all. But the truth is, the king leaned in, his light deepening to a dramatic blue. We too would see what has become of our city. The underwater tour began behind the Reef Castle, where a sprawling docking bay had grown into a second city. Coral arches rose in sweeping curves, each doubling as a slip for submarines and trade barges. Ants in air pocket suits clattered down translucent walkways, crates strapped to their backs. Overhead, jellyfolk swam in the forms of dolphins, penguins, and manta rays, their luminous bodies trailing bundles of goods. The reef itself seemed to hum with traffic. Water tubes hissed like arteries, glowing signposts flickered in every direction, and regulated currents flowed like highways. The whole place moved with dizzying precision, a choreography of species and trade. The king spread his arms wide, his glow brightening into spotlight white. Our trade hub, he declared, as if unveiling a stage. Order, balance, and opportunity, all beneath the waves. The queen's ears brushed his side in a teasing glow. You forgot to say efficient, dear. He grinned, unbothered. That too. Locals stole glances at the visitors. A group of teenagers sipped kelp foam lattes inside a smaller dome cafe, not even pretending to be impressed by the water parades outside. One jellyfolk server leaned to another, whispering colors. Those are the surface heroes. The whispers spread like ripples. Aunt Glad, distracted by a chemist's stall, veered away from the group without a word. She was already grilling the stallmaster about molecular breakdowns and hybrid coral fusions before anyone noticed she was gone. They pressed on into the glow of a bathhouse where steam curled through the water. Scents of salt, mint, and pressed kelp filled the air. Inside, jellyfolk had taken human female shapes, their smiles knowing, their eyes liquid. The crowd murmured, the hero, the one who saved the hatchlings, the one who spared the lionback turtle. Before Riot could argue, hands reached out and pulled him into the mist. Fair massage, fair bath, come champion. Wait, hey, he barked, but he was already gone, dragged into warmth, laughter, and scented steam. Kalm sighed. Cool shade of pink, bro. The king chuckled, turning to the queen with a showman's shrug. Even our bathhouses are. Persuasive. The tour wound on past entertainment domes, where squid shooting games splattered ink across bubbles, and an arena buzzed with playful combat. Ink balls sailed like fireworks. Water slides coiled through the walls, a Ferris wheel rose toward the surface, and a roller coaster vanished into daylight above. At last, they reached the sanctuary, lionback, tigerback, and bareback turtles gliding through long seagrass beds. Their eggs lay clustered under round-the-clock watch. Kalm gasped when she spotted the familiar shell of the turtle Grandpa Fury had tossed aside in episode 5, back again, following the Jellyfolk as always. The royals didn't need to boast. The reef itself spoke louder than words. They had turned the impossible into everyday life. Everyone seemed impressed. Everyone except Grandpa Fury, who stood stone-stiff and aloof, as though even wonder couldn't touch him. The king raised one arm in a slow, glowing sweep. And now, one of the most important living spaces of all, the reef itself. The queen's light shimmered soft and steady. You must understand, the Order of Reef Thieves is not because of us, but because of what we've built together. Trade runs clean. The currents are steady. Grandpa Fury squinted. Did you say the reef thrives? Or did you mean to say the reef thieves? A ripple of scandal colors flickered across the plaza. The king's glow shifted jade green. Yes, the reef thieves were once an issue. But alas, bureaucracy. We hired them. Aunt Glad raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite herself. The king puffed brighter, theatrical. We went to the parent order and brought them on as reef security. Grandpa barked a laugh. Thieves as security? That's what you call them? Where I'm from, we just call that a union with knives. Aunt Glad snorted. Better union than most miners. Grandpa wasn't done. The Order of Reef Thieves? Ha! That's like calling a shark a lifeguard. The queen chuckled, leaning against the king's arm with affectionate ease. Yes, yes, a shark would be a very fast-swimming lifeguard. Land dwellers do talk so differently from us. The king pressed on, still glowing jade, though amusement pulsed at the edges. It works twofold. One, they already had the skills. And two, anything they foil, they still get to be thieves. Funny part is, it's all become a kind of game with the guilds. The best are sent in, and when they're caught, most pick to join us rather than face jail. Many have families now. Some work in father-son duos. The queen added gently, it is a way out of a life. Order through opportunity. Their glow softened together, a rare moment of shared pride that made the exchange almost tender. A Jellyfolk attendant pulsed forward, cheerful as a theme park guide. And on your left, you'll see the ant corridors, marvels of ventilation and poor workplace safety. Aunt Glad sniffed. Only under the sea could thieves get promoted to orderlies. Grandpa grumbled. Next thing you know, they'll knight a pickpocket and charge me for the ceremony. The group drifted on, and the guide announced again, and on your right, the Venus whale traps. Don't stare too long. They bloom to feed about once a month. Riot, still damp from the bathhouse, wavered between an anglerfish and a lobster. The half-torn bathrobe tangled around him like seaweed threads. Wait, is that part of the tour? Kalm smirked. It is now. Focus, bro, before they put you on display. Riot huffed, flaring into a puffed-out pufferfish. The last scraps of robe dispersed into the current, bubbles spiraling up around him. Aunt Glad folded her arms, unimpressed by the grandeur. Steady currents? Pa, that's half the fight won already. Don't pretend you didn't design it that way. The king's glow darkened, then steadied. And yet we wonder, your companion, he nodded toward Fury, he does not seem delighted. Kalm smirked. Oh, don't mind him. He wouldn't crack a smile if the sky split open and rained goldfish. Riot gave a slow nod, his skin flashing faint octopus patterns before he wrestled them back. It is impressive, though. The light alone makes my scales hum. Grandpa Fury's answer was a grunt. The royals exchanged a glance. For a heartbeat, their colors dimmed, like doubt clouding ink. The queen's voice softened. Perhaps we've misjudged. Not all visitors welcome what we've made. Some even call us traitors for the currents we share. The king followed, low and formal. If our work offends, speak it plain. We would not force marvels upon unwilling eyes. Grandpa Fury lifted his chin, tone measured, formal as stone. I see what I see. No more, no less. Aunt Glad snorted. Cryptic as always. Don't take it personal. He's allergic to compliments. Kalm chimed in, smoothing it over. What she means is, we're impressed. Honestly, this is beyond anything we've seen. Riot added, yeah, let him sulk. You've built something worth showing off. For the first time that evening, a flicker of warmth passed between the royals and their guests. The unease didn't vanish, but it thinned, replaced by a faint glow of invitation. The king and queen led them onward, beyond the reef castle walls. A sprawling docking bay unfolded like a second city. Coral arches had been coaxed into docking slips where submarines and trade barges rested side by side. Ants in air pocket suits clattered across translucent walkways, hauling crates on their backs. Overhead, jellyfolk swam in the shapes of dolphins, penguins, and manta rays, luminous bodies glowing under the weight of tied bundles. The reef itself hummed with traffic, water tubes hissing with current, glowing signposts flickering in all directions, tides regulated like highways. Kalm tilted her head back in wonder. Riot whistled low. Aunt Glad muttered something about ants with a better union than most miners. And Grandpa Fury? He stayed straight-backed, unimpressed. Then came the cave, 100-foot reef angled inward, plunging into a bottomless hole. The vaulted ceiling was pocketed with hundreds of bubbles, each anchored to platform balconies stacked in tiers across the walls. Some bubbles moored to trader subs and party cruises, their hatches half in the air, half submerged. Others had been transformed into attractions. A bubble nightclub, its floor trembling with bass. A comedy stage echoing with laughter. Food stalls selling sub-subs, hoagies with more seaweed than bread. Prize booths where squid shooting games splattered ink across transparent walls. And a sprawling ink arena where humans, ants, and jellyfolk alike waged playful war with bladders full of harmless ink. Ink balls sailed. Water slides wound between bubbles. A Ferris wheel spun slow, carrying guests toward the surface. A roller coaster rattled through the cavern mouth, vanishing into daylight above. At the cavern's heart, 4 quadrants divided the chaos. One for air balloons, rising and dipping in leisure rides back to the surface. One for submarines of every size and shape. One for humans, ants, and jellyfolk alike, a mingled square of markets and mingling. And one that was different, a sanctuary. The crowd surged with noise and color. Somewhere in the din, a booming announcer's voice echoed through the ink arena speakers. Open quote, "Welcome to the Cavern of Wonders, brought to you by Brainfire. Mac Movement. Don't forget to like and subscribe before the next round begins." Close quote. Aunt Glad groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. Even under the sea, advertising survives. Riot, half shifting into a squid himself, muttered, "At least they're not running pre-rolls." Kalm grinned, tapping her axe against the bubble glass. "Give it time, bro." Grandpa Fury only folded his arms, staring at the Ferris wheel with all the disdain in the world. Roller coasters, humph. Seen faster stomach aches on land. In the 4th quadrant, the chaos of attractions gave way to quiet water. The space had been converted into a sanctuary. Lion-backed turtles, tiger-backed turtles, even bareback turtles swam between long seagrass beds and dunes of pale sand. Their eggs lay clustered beneath round-the-clock watch, guarded fiercely by jellyfolk attendants. Kalm gasped, eyes wide. Riot leaned close and whispered, "Episode 5, remember? Even the one Grandpa tossed aside found its way back here." And there it was, unmistakable, the shell of that turtle drifting through the weeds. They always followed the jellyfolk, but this time they hadn't just followed. This time they had claimed a corner of land for themselves. Tucked among the glowing cradles was more than just turtle nests. A nursery had been built for newborns of every kind, jellyfolk, humans, and hybrids alike. Lamps flickered softly in the water, mimicking dawn. A midwife's house welcomed mothers to stay through those first vulnerable weeks. The sight was tender, almost holy. Grandpa Fury crossed his arms and said nothing. His silence weighed heavier than his words ever could. The royals moved the group onward. The reef's docking bay unfolded like a second city, alive with barges unloading their cargo, ants in air pocket suits clattering across translucent walkways, and jellyfolk overhead glowing as they hauled goods between ships. The king was midway through a speech about traffic regulation systems when Aunt Glad slowed, her eyes snapping to a chemist's stall where colored flasks bubbled like captured storms. "Imported reagents? From the trenches? You didn't tell me you had supply chains this deep." Before anyone could answer, she was gone, already grilling the stall master about molecular breakdowns and hybrid coral fusions. The royals kept talking, practiced smiles never faltering. The rest of the family only realized 20 steps later that Aunt Glad wasn't behind them. The family had barely noticed Aunt Glad's absence when she returned, dragging a bulging satchel of reagents. 2 scientist sharks trailed behind her, struggling under the weight of extra crates, eyes darting in every direction. Glad's tone was casual, as though hauling nervous predators into a royal tour was normal. "They're helping me with supplies. Works out nicely, as long as we're quick before Nada wakes up. The sharks bobbed their heads in frantic agreement. One whispered just loud enough for the group to hear. We are Nada's workers now. She tells us what to build, bubble by bubble. Too many ideas. We are scared to say no. Glad smirked and gestured toward the king and queen at the head of the hall. If you're apologizing to anyone, it should be them. The sharks paled, fins twitching. They turned and bowed low before the rulers. Your Majesties, Shark One stammered. We are sorry for the haunted house, for frightening the young ones just to bleed them of ink. We thought it would work. Shark Two finished in a rush. The king loomed above them, immense and radiant, his body split in two halves of light, one pulsing crimson, the other blue-green, as though judgment itself swirled inside him. Ink from children, he said slowly, letting the words drip like anchors. The queen's ears glowed faint turquoise, her woolly rabbit shape shimmering soft with disappointment. Fear should never be a tool. The sharks quivered. We beg forgiveness. Then suddenly, the king flared bright white, his voice booming theatrical. But imagine it. A grand attraction. Halls of horror, stalked by mirror phantoms, doors that vanish behind you, shadows that whisper your name. He spread his arms like a conductor summoning lightning. A fictional monster, born from ink and mist to delight the masses. Who among us would not pay to be terrified in safety? The queen sighed, brushing a paw against his side with affectionate resignation. Dear, not every plan needs to be a stage. Grandpa Fury grunted from the back. Horror house, buffet line, same thing. Both end with someone sick. The plaza rippled with nervous laughter, the sharks backing away with visible relief. Aunt Glad tightened her grip on her satchel and muttered, Works out, for me anyway. The royals did not lash out. Instead, the queen's ears shimmered faint turquoise as she spoke softly. It may not have been wise, but sometimes it is good for the young to be scared, to learn not to be tricked into things too easily. The king's glow pulsed steady agreement. Yes, a painted fear is still a lesson, and better they face it in play than in shadow. The scientist sharks froze, then suddenly lit up, their fear gone in a rush. Their scales shimmered proud as kings of the sea, fins spread wide, voices carrying bold for the first time. The moment didn't last, but for a heartbeat, they looked like rulers of their own domain. Then came their offering. Your Majesties, Shark One said, our ink can do more than mark or scare. Watch. He pressed an ink circle onto the wall, dark as obsidian. Another dab spat into a circle on the floor flared to life. Between them, the water bent into a glowing arc. A tube of current stretched, shimmering. From the outside, it looked like a circle of water stamped into stone. From the inside, it felt like a looping racetrack that folded reality. Dive through one side, arc in a half circle, and burst out the other. The ants were the first to adapt. With bubble helmets and AirPods strapped to their feet, they clambered through the tunnels, marching sideways across ceilings or upside down along walls. Beside them, Jellyfolk darted like comets, weaving through the arcs in luminous spirals. A shared highway had been born. Ants where no ants should walk, Jellyfolk looping like fireworks, the whole space alive with traffic. The royals let the demonstration fade, leading the family onward. Not every pocket was formal. Some domes had been stitched into little marketplaces. A pair of human teenagers hunched at a cafe carved into reef stone, sipping kelp foam lattes through straws far too long. They looked bored. Only teenagers could ignore glowing water parades and jellyfolk weaving constellations across the ceiling. The message was clear. This wasn't just spectacle, it was infrastructure. Ants could trade goods. Humans could drink coffee beneath the sea. Jellyfolk could walk on water or dissolve into light, always in control. And as the tour pressed on, they rose, heading up toward the surface. By the time they surfaced, Riot had made his choice. He pressed his will hard against the swirling shifts, body flickering through half a dozen creatures, eel, shrimp, even a gawky octopus, before finally locking into one form, a squat, bright strawberry frog. Kalm doubled over laughing. Nice shade of pink, bro. But Riot didn't panic. He stood steady on webbed feet, breathing slow. The colors rippled but held. Controlled pink, he said through clenched teeth, pride and irritation mixing. Kalm smirked. Yeah, controlled, until somebody orders dessert. The guide's voice cut through, carrying them forward across the upper terraces. And on your left, the constellation bears, guardians of the volcanic ridges. Notice their glowing pelts. Do not attempt to hug them. Kalm leaned close to Riot. I could totally hug the cub. Riot croaked back. You'd get vaporized. Again. On their right, tourists gathered behind barricades to watch lion, tiger, bareback turtles crawl ashore. Hatchlings flailed toward the waves or plodded landward, choosing their fate beneath heavy guard. Visitors cheered, betting openly on which way each would go. The next marvel rose on the horizon, a lighthouse whose beam cut impossible colors through the water. Not just white or gold, but hues dredged from volcanic vents and trench fire. Violets like bruised sky, molten reds, teal streaks cracked like gemstones. Each sweep lit paths across neon arches and glowing retro streets. Beside it sprawled Moontown, a 1960s seaside fantasy rebuilt beneath the waves. Neon surfboard arches bent in pastel blues and pinks, reef bars pulsed like diners, and streetlights shimmered with light borrowed from places no human eye had ever seen. The royals beamed with pride. Kalm, though, didn't notice the view. Her eyes locked on a shop sign across the way, yo-yo strings added to any weapon, guaranteed return. She clutched her three-headed axe, muttered, "About time," and darted off. Riot, now strutting in a borrowed bathrobe, flanked by 3 Jellyfolk attendants and hauling a crate that could only be the mirror armor, called after her. You're seriously gonna turn that thing into a fidget toy? But she was already gone into the neon crowd. Grandpa Fury grunted, arms crossed. You kids and your lava lamp moon, we already got Luma back. Closer than ever. Don't need a fake one. Groovy, man. The king and queen dimmed uneasily at his tone. Kalm nearly choked laughing. Riot elbowed her into silence. Aunt Glad only sipped her drink, eyes rolling behind the rim. From there, the tour swept into Moontown proper. Lazy rivers spiraled into wave pools lined with neon bars, each glowing its own hue. Drinks foamed like they'd been tapped straight from the trench. It felt like Vegas colliding with Myrtle Beach, rebuilt by bioluminescent jellyfish. Concert archways bent overhead, neon surfboards doubling as acoustic amplifiers. High notes carried clean above the water, while bass lines rumbled deep below. The first interspecies concerts were already being booked. Surf and tide pools churned in perfect rhythm, entire artificial breaks pulsing with jellyfolk beat patterns. Surfers carved choreographed contests under violet-green moonlight, balconies above crammed with cheering crowds and glowing cocktails. The king spread his arms with flourish, his colors swelling like stage lights. Moontown, music for the air, rhythm for the sea, harmony made visible. The queen brushed against him, ears trailing ribbons of turquoise light. You mean noisy and neon? But yes, harmony. Grandpa Fury grunted, unimpressed. Harmony's overrated. Looks like a boardwalk with a glow stick budget. The royals smiled tightly and swept them onward. The nursery district came next. Midwife houses rose at the border of water and air, their bubble walls pitched as sanctuaries for early childhood. New mothers stayed here for weeks, raising dual breathers who could live in both worlds. The guide gestured proudly. We raise heirs for both realms. Equal parts health claim, equal parts political flex. Then came the centerpiece of Jellyfolk nightlife, the Bubble Pearl Club. From outside, it glowed like a pearl suspended in the current, ringed by lazy rivers carrying guests past food stalls and luminous drink stations. Inside, upper levels circled pools rimmed with dancing platforms where humans, ants, and jellyfolk silhouettes swayed together. Music throbbed, lights pulsed, bodies blurred into one luminous rhythm. The basement revealed glass floors and walls opening directly to the sea. Jellyfolk swam in radiant tendrils, weaving shapes and silhouettes until the whole chamber became a living disco. Grandpa Fury stopped at the threshold, unimpressed as ever. Seen it in the 570. You ever hit 5 points at any hour? Horrible. Same vibe. The royals stiffened, unused to comparisons with rural dive bars. But the family just chuckled, letting Grandpa's small-town jab hang in the neon haze. The king lifted both arms, glow rippling in waves across the crowd. His voice boomed like a carnival barker echoing through stone and current. Now, time for us to see what advancements have risen out of water, or as you land ones say, out in the open. Behold our stadium of currents. The gates opened, and the family stepped into a roaring arena. Where once it had been a quiet practice ground, now painted ink circles shimmered on every wall. One huge pool glowed at the center, linking them all. Jellyfolk launched through the loops in streaks of color, spiraling across the air like fireworks. Ants clambered sideways across walls and ceilings, their bubble packs puffing bursts of air as they flipped in dizzying zigzags. Humans splashed in with borrowed gear, most sputtering back out after a few laps, while the crowd pulsed scandal colors in amusement. Riot's frog pink skin flickered as he tried to hold steady. He clenched his fists, locked his breathing, and managed to dive clean through one ink ring, emerging on the far side as a shimmering eel. A second loop later, he was a half bat, half squid tangle, before slamming back into frog form on the bleachers. Kalm called across the din, deadpan. Nice control, bro. Pink's still your best look. The crowd laughed, not unkindly, their lights rippling at the spectacle of him. Aunt Glad scribbled notes furiously into a waterproof ledger, muttering about portal chemistry. The king basked in it all, strutting the dais like a conductor. Games, duels, wagers and wonders. What began as a quirk of ink has become the pulse of our reef. Every loop, every color, every cheer builds us higher. The queen brushed against him, smiling at his theatrical fire. Her turquoise glow steadied his crimson blaze, affection woven even into showmanship. Grandpa Fury alone stood stiff, arms crossed. The crowd roared, the lights flashed, the royals nearly glowed with pride, but his jaw barely twitched. Humph, he rumbled. Seen faster races at the county fair. Paint some rings on a pig pen, same thing. The royals faltered for a moment, their glow dimming at his words. The laughter of the crowd thinned into nervous ripples. And just like that, the tension peaked, setting the stage for his eventual break. Grandpa Fury strolled with his hands clasped behind his back, inspecting the stadium like a principal on patrol. The arena thrummed around them. Jellyfolk shooting through glowing ink rings like fireworks, ants clambering ceilings with acrobat precision, the crowd flashing scandal red and awe blue as bets and brags filled the air. The royals rose to the central dais, their glow settling into something calm, unreadable. The queen's voice carried, soft but heavy. Open quote, "If the heroes of this city do not wish our folk here, perhaps we should find a reef that does." Close quote. Fury's head tilted ever so slightly. The king added, more firmly, his glow flaring red at the edges. Open quote, "We could leave this very minute if we are unwelcome." Close quote. That did it. Fury snapped forward, eyes blazing, his voice cut like thunder. "Wait, did you just say find another reef?" The royals blinked. The crowd stilled. Fury jabbed a finger toward them, beard bristling. "So let me get this completely straight. You're not testing my resolve? You mean to say you'd actually leave?" The king started to answer, but Fury barreled right over him, his tone flipping from anger to manic joy. "Oh my gods, you were serious. You were going to walk away. No, 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 no." His voice cracked into a roar. "I love it. All of it. The food, the paint fights, the weapons, the trade, the nightlife, everything. You don't get to take this away. Not now. Not ever. This isn't spectacle. This is culture. Ours now. Part of us." Aunt Glad sighed into her drink. Took him long enough. The royals flickered with unease, then softened as Fury's mania rolled on. He spun, arms wide, shouting to the stands. "You hear me? They're ours now. Every buffet, every duel, every ridiculous glowing nightclub. 24/7 means forever, not temporary." He slapped down a bet slip on the nearest counter that boots hammering coral. Before the ticket even printed, he was sprinting toward the banquet halls, roaring, "Forever buffet!" The plaza pulsed neon laughter as he vanished into the glow, leaving the royals exchanging a look that was equal parts bewildered and oddly charmed. Hook the royals only shrugged, as if Grandpa's buffet sprint were the most natural response they could expect from a surface dweller. With unshaken calm, the queen gestured toward a freshly painted ink ring gleaming on the stadium wall. Aunt Glad folded her arms, wine bubble orbiting lazily overhead. "Well, now that the Farsado ego trips are out of the way, perhaps you'll join us," she said dryly. "The Mirror Realm's got something better than races and buffets. I hear there are a few scientist sharks still waiting to apologize for trying to bleed you dry." Quite literally. The ring pulsed, filling with liquid light. The circle stretched into a flowing passage, the water itself beckoning like a curtain drawn aside. Stepping through, they emerged not into another plaza, but into the raw edge of the Mirror Realm, the campsite where their journey began. The great waterfall poured endlessly into the forming ocean below, its force cooling the black rivers of lava that once threatened to consume everything. Steam and mist rose in drifting curtains, shot through with flashes of molten orange and deep-sea blue. It felt alive, half-built, as if the ocean itself was still choosing its shape. The ink portal closed behind them with a soft ripple, and for the first time the heroes saw how far the Jellyfolk's reach now extended. Even here, bridging realms with glowing water rings. Trade would flow freer than currents, but so would grudges. And waiting somewhere in the mist, Grandpa Fury's muffled voice echoed back through the portal, still bellowing from inside the buffet. About time! Took him long enough to serve something worth fighting for. The crowd laughed. Never mind that he was underwater and couldn't possibly see the birds that were about to arrive. The family froze as the air shifted. Man, this episode's long, Riot muttered, tugging at his damp robe. Kalm smirked. Yeah, that's why it's now episodes 7 and 8. Riot blinked. Wait, you can't just do that. Hat Guy just did. Damn. Aunt Glad rolled her eyes. Like, subscribe. Kalm crossed her arms. So no boss fight? 3 episodes in and all we've faced are scared scientist sharks? Flap, flap, flap. The sound cracked across the mist. Each wing beat shimmered rainbow, sparks painting the sky like watercolors bleeding across canvas. Oh, Riot groaned. You jinxed us again. The wings unfurled fully, blotting out the mist with rainbow light. A shadow moved inside the radiance, something vast, something new, something ready to step from the birdbath into war. The villain had arrived.